up, guys? This is John Nelson, and you're listening to the Starting Block Podcast. Guys, this is a show for complete athletic development. The mission, the objective is to give you guys the tools to win, whether you're the athlete, the parent, or the coach. As always, I'm here with my co-host, Chris Scarborough. What's up, man? Good afternoon. How are you?
Hey, good afternoon.
Guys, if you are new to the show, we operate slightly differently than your standard podcast. We actually have multiple shows within the show, okay? So first, you'll get a bi-weekly Q&A from us. That's where we will take the questions you submit to us at
info@startingblockpodcast.com.
Guys, that can be anything in the performance realm, the training realm, the rehab, the nutrition, the neuro voodoo stuff, the newbie stuff, any of that type of stuff, we'll tackle it there, all right? Keep sending those in. We have a bank of questions, and so we'll keep getting them out there. Keep sending them in. Appreciate you guys. The other episode you'll get is our guest interview, and I'll bring our guest on here in just a second. But, guys, the guest interview is just like every other podcast on the planet, all right? That's where we bring our guests, our friends, our colleagues in from across the country and globe. They share their stories of success, what they do at their practices, in their gyms, in their clinics, with their athletes, their patients. And, guys, like I always say, it's an opportunity for you guys to network with somebody that shares the same core values and mission that we do, and that is extremely important to me. I'm tired of the bullshit that's out there, and we want to support people that are doing real shit. So that is our guest interview. And then the final one is you're going to get like a quarterly Friday Fire Fact. That's about 20 minutes of me, just talking about something industry related. I like to call it guided wisdom. Maybe it's anger. I don't know. It just depends on the mood I'm in. But, we got some good feedback on those episodes, so we'll keep those coming as well. Guys, we don't run ads on the show at the moment. It's not to say we won't, but at the moment, we do not run ads, and so all we do is, guys, we just ask that you just do us a solid, okay? Just do us a solid. If you support the mission, if you like the show, if you got value out of it, then just bring us a friend, okay? The show is growing, as we always say. I appreciate it. You guys heard in the last episode the numbers that we put out, so we're happy about that. Let's keep it going. Just share the show, guys. If you could, just leave us a review. That'd actually be huge. I don't spend a lot of time going over the analytics side of stuff. I just believe them. If you put value out there, good things will come. But if you wouldn't mind, leave us a review. Apparently, that really helps us. So appreciate that. Pay your dues, guys. Share the show. And, I think that's all the housekeeping stuff we got. So let's get right to it. Guys, for the third time in a year and a half, we're pleased to welcome Mr. Incredible, Garrett Salpeter, NeuFit, Part 3. What's up, bro?
Thank you, guys. I'm honored to be back. Great to have an opportunity to catch up with you, and I'm excited to talk shop.
Excellent.
It's going to be a competition between you and David Buer and Dr. J and one or two other people, like who comes on the most.
Yeah, right now I think David Buer's got everybody beat, but Garrett's he's moving up the list here.
David's awesome. Those were great episodes. So I'm happy to be in good company.
Nice.
Well, guys, I'm sure at this point most of the audience, you guys know who Garrett is. Garrett is the founder of NeuFit, based out of Austin, Texas, and they are the designers of the Neubie, which you may have heard. The Neubie is the DC current unit. And so, if you haven't listened to the other episodes, you might want to before digging into this one. Maybe the first one. Garrett and I kind of talked a little, study, research stuff in episode 2, but today we're going to get kind of into the training side of stuff a little bit more. We're going to talk like being in the trenches. And so before we get into that, though, we got to talk about the big news, Garrett. Joe Rogan, bro. Like, are y'all best friends now?
Working on it. That was very cool for people who may not have seen that or heard that. We just had a cool experience where he mentioned us on his podcast, and he was talking about the training, and he read a few paragraphs from our website on the episode. So it was very cool, and we appreciate him. He's been intrigued in this for a while. We have several mutual friends that that have used it and have mentioned it to him and stuff. So it was very cool to see that he brought it up on the air, and we're getting closer to getting him to really try it himself too.
And by the way, this was not some paid advertisement or anything like that. It was just something that he, out of, just on the podcast itself, not some ad.
Yeah, how'd that happen? Like what? Like I said, I just saw the little clip you posted. I didn't watch the whole thing. It's like, what's the backstory there?
Yeah, it was just totally organic. No advertising or anything. No paid ad or any official relationship or anything like that. The context is that he was talking about Mike Tyson preparing for his fight. He used the Neubie in preparation for his fight with Roy Jones Jr. several years ago, and there's actually some interesting backstory there that is worth talking about. So we'll come back to that. But he was talking about Mike had used this technology, and Mike had mentioned it not by name, but had mentioned it back when he was on Joe's podcast, and then he was talking about how Mike's able to do what he's doing at age 57 and things that he's done to maintain it, and he brought up the Neubie as being a big part of how he's been able to be successful and healthy, and especially with knowing the history, which again we'll come back to there. But he was talking about it, and he pulled up a clip on while he was doing the podcast of Mike using the Neubie, and he went to the link and read out our website. He spelled it out, NEUFIT, NeuFit, and then he literally read like 2 paragraphs about the Neubie on the show, and it was cool when you look at the website analytics, where you got a big spike of people going to the website that day.
Nice.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Yeah, I mean, the biggest podcast on the planet. Like, doesn't get much better than that. So,
right.
That's great, man. Congrats.
Thank you. And also for the backstory on Mike Tyson is very interesting. I know we're going to talk more about training and stuff, but many people listening to this may either have chronic pain, or you may know someone, may know someone who's experiencing chronic pain. And Mike Tyson's story is fascinating because he was one of the most powerful, incredible physical specimens in the world until he wasn't.
He was a machine.
Yeah. At the end of his boxing career, though, he had chronic pain, and it led him down this very difficult road where he had mental health challenges. He ballooned up to over 300 pounds, and he got into having used medical marijuana for dealing with pain. And there's this wonderful video where I can share the link of him using the Neubie, and he talks about how he tried to work out, and his joint pain came back, and he says he remembered why he stopped boxing in the first place. Until then, he started doing treatments with the Neubie, and it gave him a chance to be able to train consistently, to get out of pain first, that foundation, then to be able to train consistently enough to where he was able to put in the work to prep for a fight. You go through this rigorous training camp to get ready, and so he had this extended period of 6 months where he was working hard. And he was working with, I'll give a shout out to Brad Rowe, who's the former Mr. Olympia bodybuilder, who's become a good friend of mine and was using the Neubie out in the LA area for several years, and he's the guy that actually worked with Mike Tyson, day in and day out. They were 6 days a week for 7 or 8 months. They were working together to help prep for the fight. So, he was very instrumental in making all of that a big success. But it really, is sort of the major catalyst that allowed Mike to get back in the ring and get over chronic pain. Where that was really the biggest limitation for him. And to break through that barrier was huge.
That's huge. Yeah. I think, the three of us, Garrett, we're a little on the younger end of it, but the three of us remember Tyson, that guy, he's just built different. He's a different human being.
Yeah.
Best man on the planet, right?
Guys, if you haven't seen Mike Tyson fight, you need to go to YouTube and watch some of his clips. When I say he's built different, which is crazy that he's fighting Jake Paul. So who do we have here? Who are we backing? Who's going to win this fight?
It's tough to bet against Mike Tyson at all, right? But
I know. Even though he's 57 or something now.
Yeah,
he looks in the best shape he's ever looked.
Yeah.
Ever. I know Jake Paul is a heck of an athlete. And I know he's fought a couple other guys, but if you piss Mike Tyson off, if you just throw one punch that just isn't in line with maybe, things, you're done. He'll end you.
Yeah, one of the things back in the day, which by the way, Mike Tyson and I are about the same age, so just kind of, just so you know. But back in the day, he was still a teenager, I believe, when he won the world heavyweight championship, or he might have been 20. anyway, he was he was pretty much a first round knockout. Seemed like every single time. He had more knockouts in the first 90 seconds of a fight than.
And then he'd bite your ear off afterwards.
Right, which ironically, that
real
we had,
talk, guys. If you don't know that, yes, he did.
Yes, in fact, we had the son of the gentleman whose ear he bit off on the
Elijah
podcast.
Holyfield was on the show. Yeah, right. It was his dad.
It was his dad. That's right. So yes, that was. It's ironic how it all comes around, but but yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but yeah, guys, he's just different breed, different breed, built different. So, but I'll tune in.
So Mike Tyson, yeah, I mean he, unfortunately, in that fight had to resort to biting the ear off. But to his credit, he made light of it now, where it's just interesting little social commentary where he has this product that's in the shape of like an ear bite, right? He's got this food product.
Right. That's pretty cool.
I've seen that. Yeah. We should have asked, do they share profits on that one?
Yeah. I was gonna say, there ought to be a little kickback on that. Yeah.
But anyways, I know I'll be watching it, but I guess that kind of bridges the gap with like the training component, like to all this stuff, and I think Garrett, that's something that you guys, in NeuFit did incredibly well, and I think really brought to the forefront. So like I don't really know where I want to like go with this conversation. I just kind of want to get into it. I know one of the things that intrigued me a lot was actually Brad Rowe. At the time that I don't know if you guys are still working together or not, but like at the time that he was making his kind of final push, I feel like, into the Olympia side of stuff. Using the Neubie to train, using it at Gold's, and going through his posing routine and stuff with it as well, which I thought really was intriguing because I'm kind of in the bodybuilding side of stuff. I mean, we've got I think 3 IFBB pros, and then including my advising PT, she's an IFBB pro, and so like I was competing too, and I thought that was interesting. So like let's just dig into the training component, both from like the athletic, but maybe even the bodybuilding side of it. Like, share kind of how that helped Brad, what y'all learned in the process. Cause he was kind of the first big one, wasn't he? Like from a training side of stuff.
Yeah, he was. And, and working with him, he then in turn, we just talked about how he used the Neubie with Mike Tyson. He also worked with Dexter Jackson, who's an amazing story that we'll come back to when we talk.
Right, yeah, Dexter, yeah. Dexter placed 5th, I think, in that Olympia.
He came in top 4. So just to give everyone an idea here, we'll come back and unpack this, but for everyone listening, so Dexter Jackson won Mr. Olympia in 2008, and he then, in the late teens, 2017, 18, 19, people said he was done because once bodybuilders start losing mass and definition in their legs, that's essentially the the sign that their time has come.
That's the death sentence.
Really be competitive anymore, right? And so Brad Rowe started using the Neubie with Dexter Jackson, and going into the Mr. Olympia in was it 2020 or 21? I'm confused with the COVID, but
I can't remember. I feel like it was 20. I feel like it was 19 or 20.
Oh, y'all are talking Greek to me. This is a.
Sometime last year, so Dexter Jackson went out to compete in Mr. Olympia at age 50, and he hadn't been in the top 10, he hadn't placed in the last several years, right? Everyone said he's on the decline. So leading up to this, he worked with Brad Rowe. He did 1 leg session on the Neubie each week for 16 weeks. And if you look at the before and afters, his legs grew, his legs got more defined, even at age 50. He steps out on stage, and he got 4th place at Mr. Olympia, looked better than he had in the previous several years. And it was this amazing story. And it's a good segue into why that is when we're talking about training. So, as we dive into this, there's a few things that I think it's worth mentioning just in terms of sort of jumping off points, basic conceptual framework here. So one is, we are really trying to take a nervous system first approach. And for most people listening to this probably know what the nervous system is, but it's worth taking just a sentence to define it. The nervous system is the control system of the body. It's not the hardware, the bones, muscles, connective tissue, right? It's the software that sends those signals to control the hardware. So the nervous system tells the muscles what to do. And if you're talking about wanting to build muscle, so we talk separately about athletic development and athletic performance, but if you want to build muscle, it's vitally important that you have enough neurological signal going to that muscle so you can engage enough of it, get enough mechanical tension on those muscle fibers so you create a stimulus for the body to rebuild that muscle. And then also, obviously you guys know these things, just trying to bring everyone up to speed. But and then,
bring it all up to
Yeah.
speed. Yeah.
Yep.
So we want to make sure we have enough neurological activation there, and then we want to make sure that the nervous system is able to shift into a parasympathetic dominant mode after training, because that's when the growth happens. The growth doesn't happen during training. That's actually catabolic. That's breaking down. The building back up happens during the recovery period afterwards, especially during sleep. So we want to also make sure that the athlete, the individual, the bodybuilder is shifting into that primarily parasympathetic dominant state, the rest and digest state, to counteract that fight or flight state. And all along the way there's different hurdles or different impediments that can stall progress or block progress. So if you look at the muscle activation piece, you need to get the stimulation in order to trigger the growth processes to happen afterwards, right? So if we're not able to get enough nervous system activation to the muscles in the first place, you're going to be very limited on what you can do. And then if you're not eating and sleeping afterwards and stuff like that, but obviously that makes a huge difference. But on the activation piece, so many bodybuilders run into this problem of, they got to train around injuries and they can't lift as heavy as they once did, or like they need to do to activate their muscles because of injuries, because of aches and pains. And so there is this, no matter how much we think we want to talk about, training and not rehab, they're always going to be intertwined. There's always going to be this importance of having this base level of foundation of effective coordination, joint mobility, pain-free movement. Having as wide as possible of a repertoire of pain-free movements available to you is going to be the foundation, regardless of the goal, whether it's bodybuilding, whether it's pitching 100 miles per hour, whether it's sprinting a 4.4, 40 yards dash, whatever it might be. So that is so important. And so a lot of times, even the same basic rehab work that we're doing, mapping around in the body, finding hot spots, finding where the nervous system is guarding in some areas with excess tension that would limit range of motion and restrict blood flow, finding where there's muscle inhibition, where the areas are being shut down because of bad habits developed over time, because of responses to recent injuries, whatever it might be. If we can map around and find those areas and sort of plug the leak, so to speak, neurologically, if we can stimulate those areas and allow that provide that neurological impulse, that when that person then goes through their workout, they're actually engaging and activating the correct muscles, and allows them to get more stimulus in that workout, which is then a greater trigger for the recovery process to happen afterwards. And so with someone like Dexter Jackson, he has so much muscle and he's trained for so long that he normally would have to lift very heavy to get that muscle activation to trigger any further growth to happen, right? The body, also one other point of this, one other piece to think about is that, think about what it takes, the amount of energy it takes to carry around and build and then maintain excess muscle mass, right? Our brains want us to conserve energy because, they evolved over time where like there could be a famine tomorrow. Our brains are thinking, we don't want to spend more energy. We want to conserve energy literally in case there's a famine, because that could mean death, right? And so you have to send a lot of signal and have a lot of things go into building muscle. It takes a lot of freaking work, and so for him to send that signal, he couldn't do it anymore because a lot of it was because of knee pain. And so he talks about, there's a cool video, again I can share this link with you as well, but there's this cool video where he talks about how he was able to use the Neubie and basically get as much muscle recruitment, as much of that activation signal as if he was lifting very heavy weights, but he wasn't having to use nearly as much weight, having to put nearly as much strain on all the connective tissues of his knee, and still capture the muscle building benefits there. So it's this really cool opportunity to get a lot of the benefits of lifting weights, not necessarily everything. I'm not necessarily not making that claim that you get everything, but especially in the bodybuilding, if you're talking about building quality muscle, get virtually all of that benefit without any of that risk of injury or re-injury or pain or any of those downside limitations. So that's I think one of the first major jumping off points there.
Yeah. Go ahead, Chris.
As a general rule, Garrett, are you finding that muscle mass, and again, when we're referring to bodybuilding, we're referring to muscle mass gain for the most part. Do you find that yourself or most of your coaches that train the bodybuilders, are they using higher frequencies And by higher frequencies, for anybody who's listening, I'm referring to like over 100, certainly over 100 pulses per second on the Neubie. I mean, what are you typically finding that they're using for that purpose? Because if we're going to get into, changes perhaps with like speed training and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's an awesome question. So for everyone listening, just background wise, when we talk about frequencies, it's the actual frequency of the impulse coming out from the machine. So it is this direct current, but it's a pulsed direct current. And so one interesting thing about frequencies is that imagine you contract your bicep muscle right now. So we might think like, okay, when I bend my arm, that's one contraction, and when I straighten my arm, that's another contraction of the tricep on the opposing, the opposite side. But that one contraction movement to bend and flex the arm, there is actually, if it is actually dozens of individual impulses to individual muscle fibers that add together to make that contraction. And so if we're actually trying to move powerfully or exert a lot of force, our nervous systems will naturally send something in the 40 to 60 pulses per second range, nervous system impulses per second, to turn on and activate muscle fibers and motor units, the individual little segments of the muscles that all add up to make these movements. And so, so if we want to really maximize the mechanical tension on those muscles, the contraction, it makes sense to use something in that 40 to 60 range. So we often use 55 pulses per second because when you send that signal, you get all these motor units working together where they sort of harmonize. It's called tetany, not like a tetanus shot, but tetany is where if you have individual impulses, like say you were sending 5 impulses per second, you get individual muscle fibers twitching, and then they turn off and shut down in between. So you actually get this nice rhythmic on-off, which can have some other benefits that we can talk about. But then as the impulses get faster and there's less time between them, there's less time for fibers to relax in between. So they add up together and start to reach this peak where they make more force. So that's sort of the peak that happens there. So we definitely want to do at least some work in that frequency range where we are maximizing the amount of contraction that's taking place. And if you do that, the way that I like to describe it, to think about it, is like, okay, look, so if you're sitting or standing, just move your arm up and down, bend your elbow like you're doing a bicep curl without any weight at all. And then think about what happens if you then put a 30-pound dumbbell in your hand and you do the same movement. What did that dumbbell do? Well, it gave you resistance to overcome. It basically gave you feedback or input that's causing you to have to activate more muscle in order to overcome that load. Now, same experiment. You do do the movement without weight, add the Neubie pads on your bicep, and now all of a sudden the same thing's happening. It's like you put a 30-pound dumbbell in your hand. It's like you're adding resistance, but without doing the dumbbell. You're doing an electrical version of the same thing. You're getting to that same end of adding extra resistance, extra muscle activation, extra mechanical tension on there. So the one thing about that is that, think about it as the equivalent of lifting weight. And so it can allow you to do a couple things. One, it can allow you to actually get similar amounts of muscle recruitment, to do more quality reps without as much fatigue, as much breakdown of form, so you can accumulate more volume of training. And also there, particularly at those frequencies though, when you're getting that mechanical tension, as you move through it, as you lower down, you're getting a high load eccentric movement, eccentric contraction. Muscles contracting as they're lengthening. They can contract concentrically to shorten, eccentrically to lengthen. And that's where you get some breakdown, micro trauma, and things like that lead to the delayed onset muscle soreness. So we definitely, to answer your question, Chris, we definitely want to spend some time working at those middle frequencies. And we also have some, in our training certification programs, we have some limitations on that, so we don't create excessive soreness, send people too far to where they're going to be sore for.
Yeah, if you haven't gone through the course, don't use the Neubie and just go right down to those frequencies.
Right,
Do not do that.
right. That's good. It takes a process.
That's your disclaimer. Don't do that.
Yes.
So I mean, it is the equivalent. Like if you had the Neubie on your biceps and you did 30 bicep curls, it would be as if you were doing those 30 curls, almost as if you're doing those with all of them with like your 1 rep max, which of course if you had your 1 rep max, you'd have to do a rep and then rest, do another rep. You might be able to do 5 reps in a workout. Here you might be doing 30, and you might not necessarily know it until you get sore a day or two later. So that's where the safety parameters we teach and all that comes in. But there is definitely some importance of doing work there. And then there's also a bit of personalization of what someone needs, where sometimes, so at higher frequencies, one of the things that happens is that those individual impulses and twitches, they can't keep up. So it's not like, if you send a signal at 500 pulses per second, for example, it's not like you're causing 500 contractions per second. What you're doing is you're speeding up this neurological input in a way that can cause the nervous system to move faster over time, which is good, which is an important adaptation. And you're also, because the motor units can't keep up, they try to contract, but eventually they actually will let go and relax a little bit. And so it will allow you to preferentially lengthen muscles. So sometimes if someone, that can be important too, just in bodybuilding alone, if you think about muscles can only grow as much as the fascia envelope will allow. And so sometimes lengthening out those tissues actually creates more space for them to grow. And that can be important. And it also can allow them to recover, to speed up. Remember we talked about growth happens during the recovery period. So sometimes using those higher frequencies, can be good for warming up at the beginning of a session, can be good for ending a strength session to reduce the fatigue and get those muscles in a state where they're primed to more effectively recover. They're going to have better blood flow, better protein synthesis for that entire subsequent recovery period. So there's times where you want to use all of them, but spending some time where you're getting those frequencies that maximize the mechanical tension is typically important. For people who do have a newbie, actually, we talked about Brad Rowe. We had a wonderful project where we collaborated with him to do a hypertrophy focused course. So for people who have the newbie, we have this whole curriculum.
It's a good course.
Oh, good, awesome. So for people who have the newbie, we have this whole training curriculum that comes with it. Level 1 certification, basic certification that comes with it, and then some people want more content related to neurological, stroke, spinal cord injury, MS patients. So we have curriculum on that. Some want more athletic performance, where we also have a course there. Some want more hypertrophy focused training. So we did a course, and Brad Rowe was actually a big collaborator on that and came to Austin and filmed a lot of the content with us here too.
Yes. Yeah. If you're a newbie practitioner and you're interested in that side of it, I'd highly encourage you to go through the hypertrophy course. I've gone through it, and it's excellent. It explains, kind of how to go through this process a little bit more. I threw out that fair warning out there for some of you guys, because we made the mistakes, before going through the course. So yeah, go through the course if you hadn't done it yet. The calves, that's a fun one to mess up.
Right.
But all right, so
that's actually, can we talk about that for 1 second?
Fire away. Yeah, what's up?
We've found that it sounds, based on what your comment, I think you find the same thing, but we've found that of all the body parts that we might train for hypertrophy, the calves tend to get the most sore. Agree? Okay.
Yes.
So I've been for years.
I had a kid literally fall down in class one day.
By the way, let me have a caveat to that though, Garrett. That's unless you have ruptured your Achilles tendon, in which case you cannot make your calf sore, or at least I can't. I cannot make my left calf sore. Awesome. Hey.
So this is an interesting topic. Definitely an aside here. I'm sorry for the detour, but I've thought about why that is, and the best I can come up with. And I want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear, any listeners may have a thought on this, but best I can come up with is that, we stand a lot, a lot of times that our calves are loaded. It's just us standing or walking. And so it seems like if you look at the tissue, they develop among the highest concentrations of slow twitch fibers. And so my best theory so far is that because of the higher concentration of slow twitch fibers, they're less able to, lengthen quickly to accommodate eccentric movement, and therefore most likely to have this micro trauma associated with eccentric movement, and that's probably why they get the most sore. What do you think?
I agree with you 100%. Yeah, that was kind of my theory as well. But Because I've made the mistake. I've done it. Like do a couple sets with load for the first time. Can't walk. I tell you the story of the kid. Yeah, we did 3 sets of 10, no non-weighted, at a middle frequency. No, 2 sets of 10 on middle frequency. Kid couldn't walk. Like real talk, fell over in class. Got up, going to the bathroom, collapsed. So yeah, no, I agree with you. I do think that's got to be it. I'm glad to know that was you guys have been wondering that as well.
With this, if I could just kind of tie a knot on this one before we move on to the next topic, I think it's a case of with great power comes great responsibility, right? You have this tool that can make such a big difference, can accelerate progress and do so many things. And, you can have too much of a good thing, right? So that's why, we teach in the curriculum, teach these very, tightly controlled boundaries of how much you do and how you introduce people to it and ramp up over time and stuff like that. But
yeah, and that's why I encourage you guys. I mean, I haven't done the performance course with you, but I've definitely done the hypertrophy one. Yeah, real talk. We're joking around, and it's funny to laugh because everybody's safe and fine, now. But yeah, I mean, great power comes great responsibility, Uncle Ben. You're absolutely right.
Yes.
And yeah, but yeah. So like, one of the things that I'll tell people when we're training with the newbie is, I think a lot of people have a hard time wrapping their brain around the fact that like they don't have to do as much work. You still have to work hard, but they find it hard to believe that a session can be done in 20 minutes, and we accomplished probably more than you do in your hour and a half, regular general session. And that's simply because, you're able to recruit more muscle than you normally do. And so it's something you've always talked about, Garrett, right? Like the body's only going to allow you to recruit so much muscle, 40, 50% of the muscle. And even if you're a power lifter, like, that 50% of the muscle fiber may be extremely strong, but using the newbie or, with ISOs, we're able to recruit, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80% of the muscle. And that's just not something that you can really do, on your own per se, that's one of the benefits of training with the newbie in my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that we're getting into a little exercise physiology here, talking about muscle recruitment and, fiber types and stuff like that. But I think the best way to kind of frame that up for people who are wondering that, why are they telling me to stop after, whether it's 20 minutes in this case or whatever. And, I think the best way to think about it is, like we talked about several minutes ago, imagine that every time you are doing a movement with it on, that those muscles are experiencing, an equivalent of load of 90% of your 1 rep max or something like that, where, if you could squat 500 pounds, but you only have 100 pounds on the bar and you have the newbie on your legs, on your glutes, it's as if you have that 450 to 500 pounds on the bar. And so you have to respect, just like you would respect the weight, right? You wouldn't try to do too much because that, you could get injured. There's more risk of injury. You could injure your spine or something like that. So there's not as much injury, but we still want to respect the load here. And one of my favorite phrases when thinking about training is that our goal is to stimulate, not annihilate. We want to get in there. We want to stimulate what we can do. It's like a bell curve. You can do too little, right? Then you can do just the right amount. Then you can certainly do too much. So we want to hit that bell curve, hit the peak of the bell curve to get the result that we're after.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Go ahead, Chris.
So I was going to say, let's talk speed, Garrett. So now we're kind of changing gears from, taking pure muscle mass, and now let's make that muscle move faster. How do we alter the settings on the newbie? Now, clearly we're going to make a change in exercises, but how do we alter the settings on the newbie to get an athlete faster? Or to make movements occur faster?
Yeah, or you're stimulating not necessarily just muscle, but more, of like the elastic component to stuff as well.
Yeah, excellent question. I love that you worked the term gears into the conversation as we get to speed too here, talking about changing gears. That was good. So
that segue.
That's right. So on this topic, there's a few things that I want to start with similar. I'm a big fan of sort of starting with the big picture concepts and then drilling down into the details. So for everyone listening here, we talked about with bodybuilders, we still want to have this foundational ability, joint mobility, foundational range of pain-free movement. And the same thing applies probably even more when we're talking about speed and athleticism, because the ranges of motion, the variety of movements are going to be so much greater. So there's even more of a need for that type of coordination and the greater range, control through greater ranges of motion, so you're less likely to get hurt when you find yourself in positions that you may not train as regularly and things like that, right? So that foundational piece is the same, but perhaps it's even wider, some other nuances to it. But so there, and then in terms of speed, there's a few things. First of all, in training, I think one of my favorite principles to apply and really use this as a jumping off point is the SAID principle, specific adaptation to imposed demand, which basically says that we're always getting better at whatever it is that we're doing. So this can work to our betterment or to our detriment, right? Like if I sit, one of my favorite examples is, think about as a thought experiment, if I sit hunched over at a computer all day long for 8 hours a day for years and years and years, guess what I'm going to adapt to? I'm going to get really freaking good at being in that position, right? I'm going to earn the right to maintain this position even after I get up from my desk for the whole rest of the day, even over the weekend too, right? Because my nervous system is going to get used to holding the muscles at those lengths, right? Shorter in the front, longer in the back. The tissues are also going to adapt and change lengths over time, so that even without the nervous system tension and relaxation, the tissues, the fascia and everything is going to remodel to the ranges in which it's used. So that there's an example of where adaptation works against us, right? There's also examples where adaptation can work for us. So if we look at speed training, I think it's very important that we find ways to train at max or near max speed, because if we train slower than that, we're getting better at moving slower, and we can actually be moving in the opposite direction of our goals of increasing speed. So the biggest example of this is the coaches that have their athletes run wind sprints in the name of getting faster. What are they really doing? Well, they're doing a bunch of repetitions running at 75 or 80% of their maximum speed. So what are they getting better at? They're getting better at running 75 to 80% of their maximum speed, potentially with mechanics breaking down. So if your goal is to build more endurance, more work capacity at 75 or 80% speed, great, you're doing it. But if your goal is to get faster, oh shit, you're actually not doing that, right? You're going in the wrong direction. So
right.
So we want to make sure we have this movement foundation. We want to make sure we're finding ways to move at near max or near max speed. And then we also want to talk about, okay, what makes that max or near max speed? Again, the nervous system is so important here. So there's a lot of basics we can do. Same thing, finding these neurological hotspots, areas of guarding and inhibition. It can be part of that movement foundation. Sometimes we make huge breakthroughs in speed because the biggest limiting factor, that first domino for somebody is this issue with inhibition or bad movement patterns from a recent injury or bad patterns developed over time. And so sometimes as a maybe even unintentional side effect of good therapy, someone will just get faster because you filled in the missing link. You gave them what they needed. And then generally it's a question of what does that person need? What's the limiting step? Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's strength, sometimes it's that elastic ability that you talked about. But drilling down into speed is the ability to contract as much, as powerfully, as quickly as you can. And a lot of the limitation of that, of how fast you can do that, is not as much the strength of the muscle you're trying to contract as much as it is the ability to relax the muscle on the opposite side. Because a lot of the limitation in speed is that intermuscular coordination, the coordination between opposing muscles. I know you guys have talked about this on previous episodes too, so we don't necessarily need to spend too much time on it, other than to say, if you're resisting your own movements, it's just the same as if you're driving a car, hitting the throttle and the brake pedal at the same time, right? You're not going to be moving as fast as you can, and there's going to be some wear and tear on the hardware of the car along the way. So that's very important. So now we need to find ways to train this intermuscular coordination. We want to be able to activate as powerfully as we can each muscle, but have this coordination between opposing muscles. So how can we do that? Well, one thing we can do with the Neubie is find ways, especially at some of those higher frequencies like we talked about, to improve an athlete's ability to relax muscles that might otherwise act like the internal brakes. So, scanning around and finding areas where there's excess tension, where that braking ability is going to be heightened, or that braking resistance is going to be heightened. Scanning around and finding those and working on those can be a huge boost to speed, and maybe something that you have to work on over time. But for example, let's say it's something in the hip flexors. We could do something where we would put the one set of pads on the front side, on the psoas, on the rectus femoris, on the adductors, on any of the flexor muscles, and then do the other side of the machine with more of a contractile signal to the glute or the hamstring. And you can really train in that very precisely, like you're programming a computer, train in that intermuscular coordination, getting one side to contract while the other is lengthening out, and prime that pattern, before going out to run. And oftentimes things will be better, smoother, faster. And then back into specificity, if you go out and you run at your fastest and you're pain-free, then running actually becomes useful. Then there's the question of, how much volume can you do? And that's where you guys talk about, we use the term ERA, end-range activations. You guys talk about iso extremes, some of these movements where you can train that ability to send the reflexive signal to eccentrically elongate the muscles as they're working. You can do that. That certainly factors into speed. And you can use the Neubie in the same way I just described to amplify that lengthening. So you can train that to happen. And then another part of it is sending more, the ability of the nervous system to send more information faster. And so this has to do with this is a bandwidth question. This is like if you have an internet connection, like Chris's internet connection is not as good. Imagine he's on a dial-up internet connection, right?
He usually is, yeah.
So, some of us, those of us who are, using the internet in the 1990s, in the days of AOL and You've Got Mail, you heard the dial-up, you dial up.
You have to drag the phone line all the way across the house to get it to connect.
Right, yeah. So you'd have this dial-up internet connection where it'd be literally dialing in, going beep, 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 boop, 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 and it would, 56 kilobytes per second. And then you go to cable internet, and it's 56 kilobytes up to 100 megabytes. It's like 2,000 times more data coming down the wire per second. So if your nervous system can do that, it can turn muscles over, it can contract more powerfully, turn this over faster. So being able to send more signal, if you can send these signals with something like the Neubie that's faster and faster and faster than you would on your own, you actually challenge your nervous system. And just like your muscles can get bigger and stronger, this is a workout for your nerves. So you can train your nerves to upgrade their bandwidth so that they can learn to send more signal faster and faster over time. They can go from that dial-up to that cable internet or Google Fiber or satellite connection or whatever it is. So your nervous system can adapt and learn to send more information over time too. So there's these different ideas. Some people are going to need, just to try to wrap it up to a more a little bit of a neater conclusion here. Some people are going to need more of that, ability to relax opposing muscles. Some people are going to need more strength, and some of the stuff we were talking about in the context of hypertrophy, but can be beneficial here. Some people are going to need more of the basic foundational coordination, mobility stuff. And then some people are going to need, like you also talked about, John, in kind of bringing up the topic here, talking about training elastic ability and stuff like that. So if we're doing like more plyometric-based movements where it's more about rebounding, stretch, strength, storing energy in that stretch cycle, the way I like to use the Neubie the most is really for priming and activation beforehand. If we're trying to really move as fast and powerfully as we can, I definitely don't want the Neubie on at a level where it's creating resistance and causing someone to move more slowly, right? Because we talked about specificity of adaptation. If we have it on at a lighter level to create sensory input from a muscle that we're trying to help activate, that can be okay, so long as it doesn't cross that threshold where it's slowing somebody down. So that could be okay. But I generally like to use it to prime the nervous system beforehand so that everything's ramped up, activated, and you can move as powerfully as possible and maximize those plyometric or more reactive drills.
Yeah, I like the priming a concept. That makes a lot of sense. I've played around with that a little bit. I think where some confusion might come in with some people in at least I know kind of in the beginning, you know, as we were starting with stuff with you, is, you know, you see guys like, I guess I'll go back to Brad Rowe or whomever, like going through posing routines and things like that, or even like Tyson, like fighting, you know, with it, and you know, just the application of the Neubie in these high speed or long endurance type of activities, like posing for bodybuilding is a brutal 15, 20 minutes. And so I guess just incorporating the Neubie with those types of frequencies and based on whatever goal that you have. And so I've always kind of wondered, like, what are they doing? Maybe, you know, maybe they're priming for it. Maybe the current wasn't on. Maybe they're if they're doing like a double bicep, they're lengthening the tricep and contracting the bicep. You know, and so that's just kind of where I think some people might have a little bit of confusion, is like just the application of it. So I think you touched on it really well with the priming effect. That makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. Have you done any studies or any work on that? Like, any significant, you know, changes that are repeatable? So, hey, we've seen a X% increase in vertical jumps after, you know, doing priming.
So that's a great topic. In terms of studies, I think we talked about this on the last episode that we did together. There is published research. There's actually 2 studies looking at the effect of the Neubie on muscle hypertrophy. So from there, you know, I'm actually just referencing data that's out there, and we saw both the acute response after a session and then the muscle growth effects over a full 8-week training cycle using the Neubie end up being, you know, statistically significantly the same as traditional resistance weightlifting exercise, right? So that's where some of those claims come from. In terms of the effect of priming the nervous system before strength and speed work and stuff like that, we've seen, you know, anecdotally that it can help people get another % or 2 or 3, you know, in terms of speed or power or things like that. And, you know, I want to think about how we could structure a study or something if we might pursue. I'll talk to our
Didn't mean to put you on the spot with that one, but
so, I mean, in the cases where we've done it, there's basically, you know, there's two sort of explanations for the reasons that we've seen benefit. One is that we've brought up some deficit, and so that the performance increase is, you know, like we talked about a little bit earlier, the performance increase is essentially a pleasant side effect of the rehabilitation benefit, where you're bringing up some sort of weak link, and then all of a sudden now that was the weak link and allowed someone to perform better. The other reason it's helpful is it's essentially a very excellent, focused, powerful warm up. You're getting the activation like that, where if you do a really good, you know, if you're really aroused, not that type of arousal, John, but if you're really, you know, like psychologically amped up, right? You know, you can lift a little more weight, you can run a little bit faster, you can throw a little bit harder, and so it's because the nervous system is really firing on all cylinders, so to speak, and so it's essentially a version of that. So sometimes it's the specific thing about, you know, movement improvement, you know, and bringing up a certain weak link, and sometimes it's that ramping up of the nervous system more globally that lead to those benefits. And either way, you know, depending on whatever the person needs, is you want to give them more of one or more of the other.
That makes sense. I think that really makes sense now. I think we touched on some really good stuff here. So we've talked about the hypertrophy course. You guys have an athletic performance course as well?
That's right, yeah. So
okay.
Again, you know, these are all about ways to use the Neubie. So it's, you know, generally these are, you know, courses that are for people who have Neubies. The athletic performance course goes through this performance pyramid where we talk first about biomechanics and efficient movement, and, you know, being able to move pain-free through all the relevant requisite ranges of motion. And then we talk about strength and speed as the next layers. Then actually work capacity, energy, you know, metabolism, things like that as the next level, and then strength and speed, and then sports skill. And I think that a lot of the issues, and we talk about this epidemic and rise of you know, youth athletes getting ACL surgeries and all these different injuries. You know, a lot of it is because, I mean, there's many reasons. You know, a lot of it is not enough time outdoors, too much time on screens. You know, not enough movement and free play. And, you know, but that foundational piece, missing out on the movements there, is a big one. And then it's exacerbated by going to the top of the pyramid and working on, you know, skills and performance without having the physical prerequisites built up. It's like you're going into organic chemistry when you don't know what the periodic table is or something like that.
Yep, absolutely. I agree. Man, this is good, man. It's always good to catch up with you, and I always learn something new whenever I talk to you. Just when I think I got the newbie figured out, you teach me something different, man. Well, where can everybody find you and get some more of this information if this is their first time listening to you?
Well, I'll say I'm grateful for you and your friendship and our opportunities to collaborate here over the years, and really love what you're doing with the Starting Block. And it's
appreciate it, man.
An honor to be back on. If anyone's interested in learning more about NeuFit, there's a couple places you can go. One is our website, www.neu, like neurological, neu.fit. And then we're also most active on Instagram. Our business page, which was for many years also doubling as my personal page, is NeuFit RFP for Rehab Fitness and Performance. But this year, I started my own personal page. So it's my first and last name, Garrett.
Yeah, you did. And you like to flex a lot on that page too, man. There's a lot of shirtless pictures of Garrett in there.
I just it might be a week or two, right, whenever this comes out, but just yesterday, from the time we're standing here recording this, I put out my team encouraged me to do it, the first time ever. I was using the Neubie on my upper body, first time ever, content of me shirtless online.
Yeah. I don't think I liked that one. I think I saw it and I think I skipped it. Man, it's great. As we always say, man, I appreciate everything that you're doing, and NeuFit and your team. You guys kick ass, and y'all are doing awesome stuff. Cool, man. Well, as always, I know we'll follow up on this, and guys, if you haven't, like I said, if you are a newbie practitioner and you haven't done some of these courses, I really highly encourage you to do them. They go a lot more in depth. Like I said, I haven't done the performance one. I've done the hypertrophy and a different one, but there's a lot of things that you can apply to whatever type of approach. If you're a coach, what type of training philosophy that you have. I know I use a bunch of different things here at ELP, and I use the Neubie and incorporate it with a lot of it, so can be very beneficial for you. But yeah, so Garrett, man, bro, I appreciate you coming on again as always. And if you got value out of this, guys, go share the show, please, and show Garrett some love and like those pictures he posted too. Okay, appreciate you guys, love you guys. That's gonna be the show. See ya.